tried to detonate a bomb at a Christmas market in the town of Ludwigshafen, German prosecutors have said. Judicial sources cited by Focus magazine said the German-born child of Iraqi heritage was strongly radicalized and reportedly instructed by a member of the so-called Islamic State. Officials confirmed they were investigating the case, but declined to comment on the details.
The
12-year-old who is being accused of having planned a bomb attack in Ludwigshafen is being held at a safe place. Therefore, he doesn't currently pose a security risk. The responsible authorities are collectively looking for a longer-lasting solution. The boy is below the age of criminal responsibility, meaning no formal proceedings have been launched against him. Local residents were shocked by the news.
Is das die neue Art?
Is this a new way to carry out catastrophes like this with minors? It's a disgrace.
Schande.
The child allegedly planted a homemade bomb at the market in November, which failed to detonate, and then planted another device a few days later at the town hall. Germany is on high alert after being targeted in terror attacks by supporters of ISIL in July.
A Supreme Court constituted commission in Pakistan has released a damning report on how federal government has failed to tackle terrorism in the country. The findings held the central government responsible for failing to take action against terror groups like Lashkar-e-Jhangvi al-Alami, a terror group which is believed to be linked with Daesh terrorists. The report pointed out that the government has done little to contain many already banned terror groups which have been roaming around in Pakistan.
The Commission report will have profound effect on the federal government and its policy-making process, because the report has highlighted the shortcomings of the federal government. When a proscribed organization itself claims the responsibility of a certain terrorist incidents, then it becomes necessary and becomes a default on the part of state not to notify them.
The Commission says that Pakistan's border with Afghanistan is not monitored properly and that there is unrestricted and free flow of terrorist weapons, ammunition and other contrabands even through official crossings.
The border is very porous. There is no proper mechanism. Border management, if you see, it has become a very big issue with Afghanistan. The border management, they are not ready to follow the instruction given by Pakistani authorities. So I think at this moment it's something quite impossible to stop this flow.
The Judicial Commission was set up to investigate terrorist attacks in southwestern city of Quetta, which killed over 70 people, mostly lawyers, back in August. The terror attacks were claimed by Daesh. Javed Rana, Press TV, Islamabad.
Over to Ediz Tianshan. He's in Idlib province inside Syria and he joins us now live. Ediz, what are the latest developments then? It seems like the evacuations have been postponed yet again.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, there's also renewed clashes on the ground where we are right now in Syria's northern Idlib province. We were headed towards that evacuation point in western Aleppo when we were stopped on the road because we heard just a few kilometers ahead of us there were clashes again on the ground. And in fact, some of these fighters have just returned from that fire line. As you see, they have their anti-aircraft fighters on their pickups, and there are others who are also in other vehicles. They're not necessarily showing their faces for security purposes, but they could confirm to you that there is again fighting on the ground occasionally, and we can also see some of them in ambulances being brought to the nearby crossing point to be treated inside Turkey. Now, on top of the clashes, unfortunately, what's worrying even more is that latest explosion that took place just at that point where civilians are brought out of the enclave before they are shipped to western Aleppo or Idlib to their next destination. And we understand that the activists are saying that the explosion took place in a car park where dozens of buses are usually waiting to take these civilians. We don't know at this point who exactly is behind the attack, but there's also a second hindrance, I think, to these evacuations. On the main road just outside of the enclave, we hear that there are also dozens of pro-regime protesters that are demanding two more towns, Foa and Kafria, in the Idlib province to be simultaneously evacuated. Now, those pockets of areas are also under siege, but this time by rebel groups. And we understand that the Shia rebels are mostly Shia rebels, and pro-regime forces are stuck in those enclaves. So it seems that we are facing two problems. One, an unidentified explosion. We don't know who's behind it at the exact point where the evacuation is happening, and also protests on that main road where the evacuation is supposed to take place. And we don't know when and if the evacuations can resume.
So, Adiz, you say there we don't know who's behind the attack. Which groups would have a vested interest in sabotaging the evacuation and seeing this deal fail?
Well, we know from the previous attempts to evacuate those civilians, the first two attempts were unsuccessful. The first convoy that tried to leave on Tuesday night, remember, was turned back by mostly pro-regime allied Shia militia. We're talking about the Iranian-backed Shia militia on the ground. And a second attempt on Wednesday night as well. This time actually came under fire. And one person was killed, 3 more were injured. And after extensive talks with Iran, they finally managed to resume these talks. But remember that this very same demand, the evacuation of Foa and Kafria, was also a proposition put forward by Iran. So at this point, the only actor that we know who is against this evacuation plan is Iran itself. But we cannot say for sure whether these protests or this explosion, for that matter, are also carried out by Iran. That is very hard to say at this point.
And indeed, you are there in Idlib, as you say, which is the destination for many of the evacuees. What awaits them when they get to where you are?
Well, unfortunately, it's not going to be an easy task. As you see, the weather conditions are quite cold. And remember that we are talking about tens of thousands of internally displaced people. Now, for now, we also see dozens of trucks that are being prepared just nearby at the Turkish side. These people will initially get the very basic necessities, food and medical supplies. But as to where they will stay is really a question mark for many of them. Mostly they will be placed into the pre-existing refugee camps that are also mostly in Idlib province where we are. But some others, in case there's not enough space for them, Turkey expressed its willingness to build a new refugee camp. We've just heard from the president of Turkish Red Crescent Society this morning that they could accommodate 10,000 more tents in a new refugee camp. But other than that, if there's still no space, Turkey also said that they could also open its doors to more Syrians on top of the 3 million they already have.
Okay, Adiz, thank you.
Mr. Mike Harris, who is with Veterans Today, and he's joining us live now via Skype from Oregon. Mr. Harris, quite a significant statement, is it not? I've also read today that President Hollande has made a similar statement, although not giving away as much of a failure stance on the part of the president. Do you think the Western countries, those who have supported militants so far, will be looking to reevaluate themselves?
Well, I certainly hope so. This is the worst defeat for the West since the Vietnam War. This has been an unmitigated disaster for the Western powers. And the surrender of in excess of 4,000, perhaps 6,000 militant mercenary terrorists who've been in Syria is an intelligence bonanza. The Syrian government is going to be able to interrogate these people individually and find out what they know when they knew it. In addition to which, there is the capture of the weapons that the militants have been using. There's been some speculation. How did ISIS take possession of U.S.-made TOW missiles made by Raytheon Corporation in Tucson, Arizona? Someone somewhere in the State Department signed off on the transfer of those missiles to whomever supplied them to the terrorists. All of this information is going to come to light. We're going to be able to accurately identify who the state sponsors of terrorism are. And this is going to be, you can do this in a court setting. The ICC would be a wonderful situation for this. Whereas you can have countries like Turkey, like Saudi Arabia, Israel, France, the UK, the USA, who can all be named as state sponsors of terrorism for what they've been doing in Syria. And it's time to bring this out. It's time to purge, in the U.S. at least, it's time to purge our government of the people who advocate this sort of governmental malfeasance, if you will.
So then where do we go from here, Mr. Harris? Because, you know, we've just read a statement, in fact, by the UK, I believe it was the Defense Ministry, which says we still want President Assad to go. So there almost seems to be a divide, isn't there, between some of these Western countries about what to do over Syria?
Well, you know what? The Defense Minister of the UK may want Assad to go, but people in hell want ice water, too. You know, he's not going to get what he wants. Too bad. President Assad is duly elected. He was overwhelmingly elected by 86% of the people of Syria. They love him. He has successfully withstood the assault upon the country to depose him. President Assad is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's too bad for those who wish to depose him for petty monetary reasons. And it's time that the West stopped meddling in the affairs of other sovereign nations. And as I said, it's time to identify these countries as state sponsors of terrorism. They've also committed acts of piracy. You know, the stolen oil has come out of Syria. The stolen artifacts have come out of Syria. The oil doesn't move to the refinery by itself. It's transported on a very large crude carrier type ship or on trucks or things. Who owns those vehicles? They're sponsoring terrorism as well. The banks that are clearing the transactions to pay for this oil for the refineries are supporting terrorism, as well as the refineries themselves who are buying it. All of these parties are subject to criminal and civil litigation. They have to withstand this. It has to be shown to the world that supporting terrorism does not pay. And doing these acts of aggression against sovereign nations must end. And the people who are responsible need to be brought to justice at every level. I don't care if it is the head of state of a country, whether it's a Saudi royal family. I don't care if it's in the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Department of Defense. These people need to be brought to justice. They need to be charged criminally and explain themselves in a court of law.
Okay, Mr. Harris, we'll leave it there at that point. But of course, as always, we appreciate you taking your time to share your insight with us.
Terrorist incidents, then it becomes necessary and becomes a default on the part of state not to notify them.
The Commission says that Pakistan's border with Afghanistan is not monitored properly and that there is unrestricted and free flow of terrorist weapons, ammunition and other contrabands even through official crossings.
The border is very porous. There is no proper mechanism. Border management, if you see, you know, it has become a very big issue with Afghanistan. The border management, they are not ready to follow the instruction.
At the market in November, which failed to detonate, and then planted another device a few days later at the town hall. Germany is on high alert after being targeted in terror attacks by supporters of ISIL in July.
A Supreme Court constituted commission in Pakistan has released a damning report on how federal government has failed to tackle terrorism in the country. The findings held the central government responsible for failing to take action against terror groups like...
Accused of having planned a bomb attack in Ludwigshafen is being held at a safe place. Therefore, he doesn't currently pose a security risk. The responsible authorities are collectively looking for a longer-lasting solution. The boy is below the age of criminal responsibility, meaning no formal proceedings have been launched against him. Local residents were shocked by the news.
Ist das die neue Art?
Is this a new way to carry out catastrophes like this with minors? It's a disgrace.
Schande.
The child allegedly planted a homemade bomb.
Lashkar-e-Jangvi Al-Almi, a terror group which is believed to be linked with Daesh terrorists. The report pointed out that the government has done little to contain many already banned terror groups which have been roaming around in Pakistan.
The Commission report will have profound effect on the federal government and its policy-making process, because the report has highlighted the shortcomings of the federal government. When a proscribed organization itself claims the responsibility of a certain
tried to detonate a bomb at a Christmas market in the town of Ludwigshafen, German prosecutors have said. Judicial sources cited by Focus magazine said the German-born child of Iraqi heritage was strongly radicalized and reportedly instructed by a member of the so-called Islamic State. Officials confirmed they were investigating the case, but declined to comment on the details.
Der 12-Jährige, dem vorgeworfen wird,
The 12-year-old who is being